share my screen right now. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the workshop, my name is YY. I'm just gonna write it over here. Oh, no, YY. Yep. My first name is Yong Yang. That's why I'm called YY, but that doesn't really matter. All right, cool. So yesterday we have been talking about some fundamentals about Python, mainly on data types, right? So we talked about strings, numbers, and booleans, and how numbers can be categorized into two categories, right? One is integers, which are whole numbers, right? That it doesn't come with any decimal places. All right, then we have also floats, all right, that comes with decimal places, okay? Serve this as a recap. And strings, all right, are just the name, like the name suggests, right? It's actually a string of characters, all right? It can be small letter, can be capital letter, can be any symbol, and can be numbers as well, right? As long as they are inside the quotation mark. All right, so you can have double quotation mark or you can even have single quotation mark. All right, they will work the same. And then we have data type, which is new to some of you who have never come across computer science before, which are called booleans. All right, so booleans, they have only two types of outcome. All right, there's only two possible outcome. It's either true or false. Okay, and why is it important to understand all these different data types? It's because we have different operators and different methods, right? Methods is something that we're gonna cover later on, all right, for each and every data type, all right? Depending on the data type of the information, all right, they have a separate set of operators. Okay, and yesterday we have also talked about some functions like your print, your casting function like str and int, and also your input function to actually obtain information from your user, right? So these are some of the functions that we have covered yesterday. And last but not least, before we end off yesterday's class, we have actually talked a bit about conditions. Okay, so before we begin with today's lesson on condition as a continuation, all right, just a quick review of the current workshop. This is a beginner-friendly Python workshop. That means we're going to cover some of the very basic information about Python, like your loops, your conditional statements, all right, how to write classes, how to write functions, right? And if you're looking for something that is more advanced, like regular expressions or algorithms, right, it's not going to be covered in this workshop, right? So that's a heads up. Okay, now with that in mind, let's go over conditions, right? So yesterday we've talked about how to create conditions using what we call a relational operator. Okay, so we have learned that there are 6 types of relational operators. You have your equals, not equals, more than equals, less than or equals. All right, so using these 6 relational operators, we can create conditions. Okay, so what is condition? Conditions are actually what we call the Boolean expressions. Okay, expressions are simply any line that produces a value. All right, any line that produces a value like this. Okay, 2 plus 2, it gives you a value of 4. Right, this 4 is brand new, right? This is a new value that is given back by this 2 plus 2 expression. Okay, so any expression, expressions are any lines that give you a result. All right, give you an output. So if I call it a Boolean expression, all right, that means this condition is supposed to create a result that is Boolean in nature, right? Boolean means there's only 2 types of answers, right? There's only true or false. Okay, so one good example of condition is this, right? Let's say, for example, you have a variable called age, and you want to compare it against maybe a legal driving age of 18. Right, so let's say, for example, if your age is more than equals to 18, you say that you are now legal to go for your driving test, for example. Right, so this is a condition. Right, age more than equals to 18. This can be resolved as true or false, right, depending on the information that's inside the variable called age. Right, let's say, for example, if your age is actually 16, right? You assign the value of 16 onto age. Okay, all right, this will actually return the value of false, right? Because your age is not greater than or equals to 18, okay? However, if your age is, let's say, maybe 30, right? Obviously, this is a number that is greater than or equals to 18. This will then return true. Okay, so now that we understand how conditions work, right, we are going to learn about the conditional statements. Okay, conditional statements. Let me just write it down over here. Now, don't be intimidated by this word. Conditional statements are simply statements, all right, that have condition on it. Right, simple as that, right? Any line is a statement, okay? A conditional statement is a statement that has a condition in it. And we usually use this to affect the control flow of your program. All right, what do you mean by control flow? So when you program in Python, all right, the interpreter is going to read from top to bottom, right, line by line. Remember, we have line numbers in this particular manner. All right, each and every line will be interpreted by the computer, all right, as it goes. Now, if you have certain conditional statements, all right, you can actually get the computer to skip a few lines like this, or you can even get the computer to repeat a certain number of lines repeatedly. Okay, and this can be done by using conditional statements. All right, we are actually controlling the flow of the program. The first conditional statements that we are going to explore today is your if statement. All right, as the name suggests, it starts with the keyword if. Okay, so let's go on to do some simple programming. For those who are continuing from yesterday, you will know that we're actually using Replit for the purpose of this workshop. For the rest of you, if you're familiar with other IDEs, right, if you're using VS Code or you're using PyCharm or any other IDEs, right, out there, it is perfectly fine, all right, so long you can follow along. Okay, for me, I'm just going to use Replit because it's easily accessible to everyone, okay? And you'll realize that the repo that you have created, all right, or the project that you have created yesterday is actually saved under my repos over here. Okay, such is the beauty of cloud, right? The cloud automatically saves for you, right? It just takes snapshots of it. So we are not going to touch the day one. We just leave it there for now. We're going to create a new repo. Okay, and because repo is a huge service that provides a lot of different IDEs, we are just going to select Python, which is the language that we're going to use for this course. Okay, and let's give it a name of AWS Training Day 2. All right, then I am going to create this. It's perfectly fine if it's public. So just give it a few seconds and it'll be up. All right, I'll tell you that Python 3.8.2 is now ready to go. Okay, so for those who are new to REPL, okay, this part over here shows you your file and stuff. This is where you input your code, right? This is what we call the code editor. Okay, and your expected output will be here on your console. All right, this is where you see your output. Okay, with that in mind, let's try out the if statements, right? So if statements write like this, right? The syntax for if statement is like this, right? If followed by a condition, all right? Let's say maybe age is more than equals to 18. All right, now, after you have written your condition, always remember to put your colons, right? So this colon is going to indicate that what's going to happen if this condition is true is on the next line, right? So when you click on the enter, the code editor would usually automatically indent for you, right? This is what we call an indentation. Indentations are very important in Python because the the intention of having Python in the first place is to have a programming language that emphasizes on readability. All right, they want to have a high-level programming language that is easy to read. Okay, so by emphasizing on these indentations, we can create a structure where it is easier to read, right, compared to other programming languages, right? So this is the zen of Python, so to speak. Okay, so indentations. How do you create indentations if your code editor does not automatically indent for you, right? On your keyboard, there is a tab key. Okay, you can click on it once to create one indentation. Okay, now there are other lessons out there that that teaches how you can actually use spaces as well to create indentations. My recommendation is try not to use spaces as indentations, right? Because depending on your code editor, all right, some of the code editors may use 2 spaces as an indentation, and some may use 4, some may use up to even 8 spaces for indentation, right? So it's not very clear. So the best way to actually create an indentation is to use the tab key. Okay, so always remember this: to create an indentation, use the tab key. All right, so let's go back to the code. Now, after you have created your indentation, you need to tell the computer what would happen if the condition is true, right? So in this case, we are going to print, all right, you may now proceed to your driving test. Okay, so I am actually going to zoom in a bit on this, right, so that you guys can have a better look. All right, so what's going to happen over here is this, right? The computer is going to check to see if your age is actually more than 18. All right, so if it is more than 18, it will print, all right, you may now proceed to your driving test, right? This action will only be taken place if the condition turns out to be true, right? That means you have met the condition. However, if your condition turns out to be false, all right, that means you have failed to meet the condition, it will just skip the line and move on to the next line. All right, so when I run this, you will see an error. Obviously, name error tells you that, hey, the age is not defined yet, right? Remember what we talked about yesterday, all right? Variables, if you want a computer to use it, you must first initialize it. All right, currently there is no such thing as age in the computer's memory, right? We need to tell the computer that, hey, I want to have this variable called age. So let's initialize it by giving it a starting value. All right, so let's say if it's 16. All right, to demonstrate that it will do nothing, I will just run this and you realize that, hey, nothing is being printed. Okay, and if I were to do something like print boo-hoo, all right, it will be printed. That means I've actually progressed along the number of lines. It's just that I have chose to skip line 3 to 5 because I have failed to meet the condition. All right, the condition is age more than or equals to 18. So let's see if I meet the condition. All right, then I comment this out. Remember, to comment something out, you can use command plus slash or control plus slash, depending on your operating system. All right, command slash or control slash. All right, apparently this is a shortcut that is used across different IDEs as well, and different code editors, right? Even VS Code uses this shortcut key. So let's see. If I run this, I'll be able to see, all right, you may now proceed to your driving test. All right, so this will only be printed if you have met the condition. Okay, so if the condition is true, you will do this. Okay, so let's say, for example, you want your computer to still do something if the condition turns out to be false. All right, then you will need to use a second keyword that we're going to learn here today for our if statement, which is called your else. Okay, else keyword will tell the computer that, hey, if you have failed to meet this condition over here, you need to do this instead. All right, so if you were to imagine, or sorry, to illustrate it, it is something like a branch, right? So when I go down and then I hit an if statement, this is my if statement. okay, followed by the condition. If my condition turns out to be true, I will do action 1, right? Assuming this is action 1. And then if it's false, it will depend on whether I have this else clause or not. If there is no else, all right, it will just do nothing, right? It will just skip the line. However, if there is an else keyword, then we will be able to expect there is a second action that will be taken place if the first condition fails. All right, and only if the condition fails. All right, if the condition is being met, all right, has been met, all right, it will just do action 1 and that's it. All right, there won't go for else. All right, so let's just do a quick one. So let's say, for example, if your age is more than or equals to 18, you print all right, you may not proceed to your driving test, else print boohoo. All right, that means you have, you're not of a legitimate age for driving test yet. Okay, so let's do this, right? If I run this as 20, age 20, it would do just fine. All right, I will say that, all right, you may not proceed to your driving test. However, if you are 15, boo-hoo, all right, the else clause, right, the action 2 will be taken place. Now, if you notice this syntax or this structure of if-else statement, you realize that there's only 2 actions available to you. Okay, so when it comes to programming computers, sometimes 2 actions may not be enough. All right, so let me use my favorite example. A traffic light. A traffic light has green light, yellow light, and red light, right? So there are 3 different lights, 3 different colored lights, right? So the computer has to decide whether I should display a green light or a yellow light or a red light. There are 3 possible actions for me to take. If I were to use a simple if-else statement like this, I will not be able to fulfill that, right? Because this can only fit in 2 actions, right? So in order to fit in a third action and so on, we need to learn one more new keyword that is called your Alif. Okay, so Alif stands for else if. Okay, and how does this work out is, it is something like this. Okay, if I have the first if statement, all right, if condition, all right, let me call it condition 1. If it's true, it will do the first action, A1, all right, if this is true. However, if it is false, right, if I fail to meet the first condition, if I have an Alif, that means I have another condition over here that I need to check. Okay, so this condition over here, condition number 2, will only be checked if the first condition fails. Okay, it will only be checked if the first condition fails. All right, and it will do the same thing. If it's true, I will do A1, A2, sorry, not A1, A2. Okay, if it's false, all right, now it depends on whether you want to have more alifs. All right, so it depends on how many actions you have. Okay, so if you have only 3 actions, like the traffic light, this will suffice, right? Condition 1, whether it should be a green light or not, right? So maybe this should be a green light. Okay, if it's not a green light, then I will look again and see whether it should be a yellow light or a red light. Okay, all right. If you have more actions, for example, then you might have to go for your third Alif and so on. All right, second Alif and so on, right? This is where you have your condition tree and you will move on to A3 and so forth and so forth. Okay, let's just do a simple exercise on this. All right, so let's say if age is more than equals to 18, all right, you say that, all right, you may not proceed. Alif, if your age is, let's say, maybe more than or equals to 15. Okay, I'm just gonna print, oof, close enough, but not good enough. or maybe not old enough. Okay, so something like this, right? So what's going to happen here is, first, the computer is going to check whether the age is actually more than or equals to 18, all right? If it is, then it will immediately print, all right, you may now proceed and move on to the next statement, everything that's after Alif and else, all right? However, if it fails to meet the condition of 18, it will then move on to check the second condition, all right, which is age more than or equals to 15. Okay, if it is, then I will print oof, close enough, and then move on to the next one. Okay, however, if it's not more than 15, it will print boohoo. All right, so this else over here is like a catch-all. Okay, I call it the catch-all. Okay, that means if all conditions fail, right? If all conditions fail, this action will definitely take place. Okay, so always ask yourself this question when you're programming an if-else statement. All right, do you need the computer to actually do something? Okay, if all conditions fail. All right, or do you just want a computer to check for the condition? If it meets the condition, do something. If it doesn't meet any of the condition, don't do anything, right? If that's the case, you will just remove your else statement. All right, it's perfectly fine to have just if and Alif. Okay, now let's try this out. Okay, 15, because my age is 15, it will say, oof, close enough, but not old enough. All right, let's try a different age at maybe 12. And say boohoo. Okay, because it's neither more than equals to 18 or is it more than equals to 15. Okay, and if you notice, when I write my if, Alif, and else statement, okay, if your Alif and else needs to relate to the condition at the top, it needs to be of the same indentation line. Okay, if you have an Alif that is like this, all right, this will have an error. Okay, this will create an error. And why is this so? It's because there is an indentation over here and your Alif is trying to look for an if statement that is on the same indentation level as it is. And it will fail to do so. And it will tell you that, hey, syntax error. Okay, so now to create, usually, okay, so I've done indentation for a few lines together, right? So for those who do know how to do this, you can actually highlight two lines together and click on the tab key to create indentations for multiple lines. Okay, if you want to remove this indentation, accidentally click too many indentations. Oh, I need to remove it right now. I need to revert it. How? We have to click on Shift and click Tab. Ta-da! You have reverted your indentation. Okay, so that's like reverse indentation. Okay, hold on to the Shift and click on your Tab key. Okay. All right. So, so I will usually look at the chat for like every 30 minutes. Now it's about 12:26, 4:26. I am going to look into it 4 more minutes later. So let's move on to do a quick exercise with this. All right. Let's say, for example, you are trying to create a program that checks for your grades, right? So I have a score. Let's say maybe I have a score of 40, okay? And I want to create a grading system, all right? So how do we do that? We usually go from two different extremes, right? So I'm not sure what is the grading system right now, but back then when I was still in my secondary school, anything that is 80 and above is considered A, right? And then 70 would be B, okay? 60 would be C, 50 would be D. Is that correct? No, I don't think so. I think 40 would be D, and anything that's below D. Oh, wait. There is. Above 50 there is D, and then 40 and above there is E, and then whatever that's below it will be F, which stands for fail, right? So that's the grading system back then when I was studying, right? So I'm gonna do something like this for the program, okay? And if you have more than two options, right? As you can see, there is F, E, D, C, B, A. There's a total of 6 options over here, right? So when you have multiple options, if else statement will not be able to solve this problem, right? You will need your if, Alif, and else, okay? So there are two ways to do this. You can start from F, or you can even start from A, okay? I'm gonna do both ways so that you guys can have a feel of how it's being done, okay? So I'm gonna do this. If my score is more than or equals to 80, right? I'm gonna do it from A onwards first, right? I'm gonna say that I have a grade that is gonna be A. Okay, Alif, my score is more than or equals to 70. All right, my grade would be B. Okay, Alif, score is more than equals to 60. My grade would be C. Okay, Alif, score is more than equals to 50. My grade would be D. All right, Alif, score is more than equals to 40, then your grade would be E. All right, everything else, your grade would be F. Okay, now some of you may question me that, hey, why do I not need to have this 80 more than score more than equals to 70 in front to check for the score that's between 80 and 70? All right, now the logic behind this is because when you fail to meet the first condition, all right, your score can never be 80. All right, because if you fail the first one, your score is definitely less than 80, right? It's definitely 79 and below. So I don't really need to take care of the portion where it is actually 80 more than score and more than equal to 70. Okay, so let me repeat myself. If you have failed your first condition check, which is 80, all right, you are definitely 79 and below. Okay, then I check to see if it's actually more than or equal to 70. If it's not, then it is definitely below, all right, 70, right? So this is actually 69 and below, okay? And so forth, so forth, so forth. And when it checks that, hey, your score is actually 40, it will show me that my grade is actually E. Okay, so I am going to print my score, right? If you still remember your F strings, right? F formatting, just use the F letter, okay? Double quotation mark, and then you will say that given the score of, all right, I'll just put in my score variable. Your grade is great. Okay, so when I run this, given the score of 40, your grade is E. Okay, let's say when we create something like this, we will usually test with all the edge cases. Edge cases. That means at 80, sharp at the 80, right, the very edge, does it show me A or does it show me B? If it shows me A, then this is correct. If it shows me B, then something is wrong with your program, right? So let's do that. So I am going to input my score like this, 80. All right, grade is A, cool. 70. Oh, B, cool, it works. 6, what about 79? B, all right, so it works. Okay, I'm just gonna test out everything real quick. 60, C, 69 should also be C. All right, cool. And then we have 50, 59, 59, which is gonna be D, and 50, oops, sorry. And then 49, which is going to give, sorry, it should be 40 right now, 40. Oh, 49, actually 39. Let's see if I got fail. All right, cool. Okay, and of course, if you want to apply something that you have learned yesterday, which is your input, all right, let's say you are going to create a program that gets the user to input the score, right? So you can actually use your input, all right, and say that the question that you want on your input, right? So let's say, what is your score? Okay. And you can run this. let's see, oops, what is this thing doing here? Okay, you need to input your score, right? Let's say, for example, I got a score of 88. Click enter. Aha, something is wrong, right? There is a type error. Type error tells you that the symbol that you're using, right, the operator that you're using does not support the object, right, or the information that's besides it. Okay, so currently my score and my number over here is not being supported, right? It's saying that there is a string and there's an integer. So a quick recap over here, all right, remember this, input functions always returns a integer, a string, right? Input functions always return a string. Okay, so currently when you input 88, this is actually not a number, right? This is actually just a 88 string like this, right? So when it's being compared against 80, all right, it doesn't make sense, right? We're trying to compare characters with numbers, right? So it's not gonna make sense. So there are two ways to go about this. You will first need to cast this into an integer, all right? What I can do is I can do score is equals to int score like this, okay, by casting my score into the score. And some of you may think that, oh, why do I have to input one additional line, right? I can just put my int over here. You are not incorrect. It's perfectly fine, okay? But if I separate into two different lines, it'll be easier to read and easier to understand. But if you think one line like this is fine, it is perfectly okay, right? As long as it accomplishes the job. Okay, 88, given the score of 88, your score is A, all right? And as I said, I am going to give you two ways to write this, right? So this is the first way where I start from A. The second way is where I will actually start from F. Okay, so let's say if my score is less than 40, okay, my grade would be F. Okay, Alif, score is less than 50. Okay, my grade is E. Oops. E, like this. Okay, and you realize that once you started off with a greater than symbol, all of your alifs should have a greater than symbol. Okay, if you started off with a less than, all of your alif should have a less than symbol, right? The moment you realize one of your conditions is being written as more than, you know that, oh, something is wrong somewhere. All right. Okay, so let's say less than 60. This is grade D. Alif score is less than 70. Then you have your C. All right, Alif score is less than 80. This will be your B score. And else will be your A score. Okay, do you think it will give you the same result? All right, let's run it to find out. Okay, if I use the same score of 88, it will give me the same result that my grade is A. All right, so the logic is exactly the same, right? First, I check whether your score hits the minimum, right? The lowest point of 40. Okay, if it's above this point, all right, F is definitely out of the question, right? Then I check, is it less than 50? All right, if it is not, then I'll check for the next one and so forth, right? So this is how if Alif works. Okay, so that's it for the first project. I am going to take a look at the chat and see. Yes, we have to use int. Correct, correct, correct. Most of you remember the casting. What if we want to let the person type in the age first before the prints the machine? How do we go about? Yep. Is it necessary to leave a space between each line, or is it just for readability? Yes, it is just for readability. Oh, why is it Alif and not else if? Interesting question. This is a very Python thing. All right. So other languages, if you have been learning different languages, all of them have been using else if. Okay, and then there is Python, who chose to live the hipster life and came out with this Alif keyword. Okay, now, so far for all the programming languages that I've been exposed to, Python is the only one that's using Alif. Right, so it's quite a Python exclusive right now. What's with the curvy lines under the words? All right, when you see curvy lines under the words, that means there is an error, there is a bug, right? The red curly lines. Oh, oops. Okay, I'm drawing something. Okay, cool. Where did you input the score of 88? Mine says that grade is not defined. Okay, make sure you have assigned a value to your grade like I did over here. And where did I input the score is actually at the top over here. I have a score, which is a variable, and I have given it an input function. Okay, and on Replit, when I run this, I will key in my score on the console. Depending on the IDE that you're using, right? If it's a Jupyter notebook, it may appear differently, right, on the console, but you will still be able to see a window that pops up and allow you to type in something. All right, so in this case, let's say maybe I didn't do well in my subject. My worst subject is actually biology, right? So I was once 40 score with one of my biology score. Oh, I got an E, but it's okay. At least it's not a fail, right? Okay, I type Alif H less than equals. Why is it invalid? Natalie, I'm not sure why is it invalid, but maybe you didn't put it on the same line, right? You just remember that when you do Alif, make sure it's of the same indentation line as your previous if. Okay? Sorry, can you repeat what the hash sign is for? The hashtag sign is for comments. Right? This is me temporarily removing the line from the computer, right? Telling the computer that, hey, this line is not for you to read, right? The computer will not read this line, it will ignore this. Yes, thanks, Braden, for the explanation. How do you avoid input like -10 or 110 for the score? To do that, let's see. So what can you do is you can try something like this, right? Alif. If you really want to make sure that the score is between 0 to 100, okay, a very quick solution that I can think of right now is I assign a condition for every single one of them, all right? Assign Alif score is less than 100, less than or equals to 100, it will be A. Now, else, all right, else I will print, okay, your score is invalid. All right. Now, if I were to do this, then on my initial condition, I need to add something else, right? I need to make sure that 0 is the last score, okay? And it might be equals to 0, okay? So the first condition is this, right? If 0 is less than equals to score or less than 40, right? Now, this combination of condition is telling the computer that there can be two, it's either, sorry, let me just try to rephrase this, right? This is me trying to write that the number of score must be between 0 and 40, right? 0 is less than equals to score less than 40. Okay, so it's between 0 and 40. Okay, now if it's not within any of these conditions, sorry, if it's not within any of these conditions, it will just print else your score is invalid. So let's say, for example, I run my code, I give it -10. Oh, it says that your score is invalid. Your grade is E. Let's see what is wrong. Because when it fails the first one, it goes to the next one, your score is less than 50. My -10 is actually less than 50, -50 as well, right? So this will actually appear to be true. So I actually need to add a 0 less than equals for all of this for now as a quick solution. there is a better solution for this. I'm sure there is a better one. Okay, if any of you can think of any, you can actually type it in the Zoom chat as well. Okay, let me just try this out. Okay, your score is invalid, grade is not defined. Okay, when I get this grade is not defined because I have not assigned any grade when this print else is here, and I have actually printed a score over here. All right, so let's see how to fix this. Okay, maybe I will just remove this line. Okay, let's take a look at the chat. What's the syntax? Maybe you can start with if score is less than 0. What's with the syntax to run more than one line? If, Alif, or else? What's this? Okay, let's see. Let's see how to best fix this. You know what? I'm just gonna do this. Grade is equals to invalid. All right, let's run this. What's your score? Negative 99. Enter. Given the score of negative 99, your grade is invalid. Okay, makes sense. What happens if I have 200 score? All right, enter. Given the score of 200, your grade is invalid. All right, that's fine. Fixed. Also can. All right, the solution that's given by John is also fine. All right, because you start from A. Now, if that is the case, you can also set a condition for the first, let's say maybe 100 is more than 100 is more than score, more than equals to 80. Then you can avoid one Alif. What if the score is a sum? I don't get it. All right, so that's that for if, Alif, else. Okay, let's see one more chat. Yep. Can also do exit. What if they're typed letter? You can use. Okay, now if they want to check whether it's a number or not, this is where I explore methods, but it can spiral off to a very confusing end for some of the beginners, right? So let's say, for example, if I want to check if something is totally numbers, there is a method called is numeric. Okay, and this is a string method. Okay, now let me just do a quick one for you guys. All right, so if I were to put a score over here, I will actually do that when I teach the while loop, because using the loop, it makes more sense, right? Currently, without the loop, it will move on to the next line. Okay, so let's say if I do a score of input, what is your score? You can actually do a print score dot is numeric, right, to check if it's actually a number. Okay, I'm gonna comment all of this first just to show you how the method works. Okay, when I run this, if I say my score is ABC, this will return false. Okay, now how does this work? All right, so this is what we call a string method. Okay, sorry, let me just detour, all right, a bit of detour. Okay, if you're confused by this, don't worry, we're gonna revisit this sometime soon. Okay, this is a string method. What is a method, right? A method is actually a function that is exclusive to the specific data type, all right? And in this case, my score, which is holding an information that is string, all right, that is a string, right? Because input returns a string. I can use this method to check if all of the characters inside the string is numeric in nature, right? Are they all numbers? Okay, and then I can do something like, while it is not numeric, I keep asking for the score before I move on to the next line. That is when I learn my loops, which is something that I'm going to cover very, very soon, right after this. in fact. Okay. All right. So there are a few methods that you can use to check. There is numeric that checks for if it's all number. There is your alpha that checks for is it alphabet, and there is also num that checks for if the entire character is made up of alphanumeric. All right, alphanumeric. That means only alphabets and numbers, right? The moment one of the characters in the string is a symbol, this will also turn out to be false. Okay, so let's do a quick example on this one. All right, when I run this, if my score is, let's say, maybe 88, I typo, suddenly got A, it will also be false, right? Even though my first two character is 88, all right, they're both numeric. However, because the third character is an A, this is not going to turn out to be true, all right? Because one of the characters is not a number. And if you accidentally click on space as well, it will also be false, right? Because obviously space is not a number, okay? So you can use this to check whether the number given by the user is in fact a number. All right, now I'm going to move on to the next line before we take a look at more of the chat. So this is me trying to compare one condition at a time, right? What happens if you want to compare two conditions, right? So let's say, for example, I'm not sure how many of you have actually been to Uniqlo, all right? I'm a big fan of Uniqlo. I bought a lot of shirts from Uniqlo. They actually have a size chart over here that helps you determine if you should wear XXS, XS, S, M, L, XL, or XXL, right? And this requirement actually checks for a few things, right? It checks for your height, your chest, and your waist, right? And so forth, okay? So if you want to come up with a program that helps to determine if your size is actually XS or S or S, right? You would need to use either a nested conditional, all right, or a logical operator. Okay, if you want to combine more than one condition, all right, you need to use your logical operators. All right, let's take a look at logical operators. Okay, so if you have a condition that is more than one condition, we call it the complex condition. Okay, a complex condition is a condition that contains more than one condition. Okay, well, sounds like a mouthful, but let's take a look. And this can be achieved by using logical operator. Okay, we are going to explore the logical operators today. There are three types of logical operator. There is your AND, OR, and NOT. Okay, let's just talk about this separately. Okay, so when you're talking about an AND operator, all right, the condition can be something like this, right? A and B. Okay, this is how a complex condition would look like. Okay, so let's say, for example, Mr. YY likes to eat fast food a lot. All right, I will only be happy if I have burger and soft drink, right, or Coke, right? So I'm just gonna write it like this, right? If I have burger and Coke, that means if I have both, right, both appears to be true, then I will be happy. Okay, so if I were to write a truth table for this, all right, I have my burger, which is A. Okay, assume that A is burger and B is going to be Coke, right? So I have a table like this, right? A, B, and whether I'm happy or not. Okay, if I have no burger, which is false, all right, burger appear to be false, and I have no Coke, all right, apparently I wouldn't be happy, right? Because I don't have burger and I don't have Coke, right? So if your first condition and second condition appears to be false, right, your overall complex condition would appear to be false. Okay. However, if I have burger, no Coke, same thing, not happy. All right, no burger, got Coke, also not happy, right? The only time that I'm happy when I'm using this complex condition is when both burger and Coke is true. Okay, so always remember this, right? When you are using a complex condition that has an operator in it, all right, both conditions needs to be true in order for the complex condition to be true. All right. So if you were to imagine using a Venn diagram like this, okay, A and B, this is the area of A and B, right? Where both of your condition appears to be true. Okay. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. Let's use a purple. Okay, I have A or B. Okay, this one will be a bit more lenient, right? If burger or Coke, happy. Okay, so today Mr. Wawa is a bit more lenient, right? Either burger or Coke is fine, right? I don't need to have both, right? Either one of them is good enough. Okay, so when I write this table out, okay, A, B, and happy, if there is no burger, no Coke, obviously I wouldn't be happy, right? Because I say I want a burger or a Coke. Okay. However, if I only have burger and no Coke, fine, I'll be happy as well. All right. Because I say either one of them, right? I want burger or Coke. Okay. If you have no burger, but you got Coke, oh, okay, also happy. All right. But if you have both, all right, it will only be happy also, right? There will be no super happy or mega happy, right? It will just be happy, okay? So you'll realize that when it comes to an OR operator, it's a bit more lenient, right? So as long as one of them is true, okay, your complex condition will be true. So if I were to write the Venn diagram, it is something like this, okay? The possibility of this happening to be true is bigger compared to A and B. All right, so this is a bit more lenient. Okay, if condition one is true, all right, the complex condition is going to be true. Okay, all right, let me just connect my adapter because my laptop is actually running low in battery. Okay, let's talk about NOT, which is one of the weirdest operator because it only accepts one, not to accept one, it only needs one information, right? Usually operators take in at least two, right? You have A and B, you have A or B, all right? If you're doing mathematical operators, you have A plus B, right? You will usually give at least two pieces of information. But when it comes to NOT, I just need one piece of information. Let's say, for example, NOT A. Okay, so let's say, for example, now Mr. Wawa wants to go on a diet, right? Okay, if not burger, then I'll be happy, right? So let's say people wants to buy food for me and I want to decide whether I'm happy or not, right? If it's not a burger, I'll be happy. Okay, so let's draw a table on this. Okay, A and, oops, I think the table is a bit too small. A and happy. Okay, if there is a burger, right? There is a burger means true, right? I would not be happy, right? Because I'm asking for no burger, right? But you give me burger still, right? So I wouldn't be happy, right? Naturally. So this will be false, okay? If you have anything besides burger, all right? So it'll be false, no burger, right? Then I will be happy. If you realize the not operator is simply reversing the state, all right? If it's true, I make it to false, okay? If it's false, I make it to true. Okay, so if you were to imagine this in a box, all right, I have A over here, all right, it is anything but A. All right, it's anything but A. Okay, so this is the use of not. All right, so with this said, all right, since these are operators, there is a thing called operator precedence. All right, what are operator precedence? Let me just write it down over here. Operator precedence. Oops. Okay, that means there is a certain way that this operator happens first before the next. Okay, just like your mathematical operators, right? You always have your multiplication and division before your addition and subtraction, right? Same thing for and, or, and not. Now, if you are not sure of where to find, the best friend is Google. Right, Python operator precedence. Right, and you will be able to see that there is a list a table of precedence, okay, over here, all right, where the one at the top is always going to be prioritized first, right? And it will solve in the following fashion. Okay, and you realize that not is going to be solved first before and then or. Okay, I'm going to do a quick example on this to show you how it actually works, all right? Quick mathematics class over here, or maybe physics class. So let's say if I remove all of this, okay? If I have multiple operators, right? A and B or not C, okay? And then I give each of them a value, okay? A is true, B is true, all right? And then C is false, okay? If I am the computer, all right, I would need to evaluate it in this manner, right? This will be evaluated first, and then this. All right, and after I have these two information, I need to evaluate the entire thing as a whole to give you the final answer of the complex condition. All right, so the first part is where I say not C, right? Not C means not false. So this will resolve in true. Okay, so this will give you true. Okay, second part, A and B, right? True and true. True and true will give you true. All right, and then the last part is true or true. Okay, obviously true or true will also give you true, right? So when this expression is being evaluated, right, this complex condition is being evaluated, the final answer will be true. Okay, however, if I were to write it like this, okay, A and B or not C, okay, I would bracket this first. All right. Then maybe oh, this is actually not a good one. So maybe like let me just try to rewrite this. A and not B or C. Okay, so let's say if I want to evaluate B or C first, right? I will put a bracket onto it. Okay, so if you want to write a program that doesn't really care about your operator precedence, right? Because you forgot that, not actually comes in first, then followed by and all, right? If you don't want to remember all that, it's perfectly fine, right? You just use a bracket, okay, or some of them call it parenthesis. You just use this bracket to indicate, right, that this should be evaluated first, all right? Then followed by this, followed by this. Okay, when you have multiple brackets like this, the innermost bracket will always be evaluated first, right? Innermost first. So this will be the first evaluation, followed by the second evaluation, followed by the third. Okay, let's go through this one by one. If I have A is true, B is true, and C is false. Okay, B or C would give me true or false. This will actually give me true, right? Because as long as one of them is true, this condition will appear to be true. Not true, right? So second will appear to be false. Okay, so A and false, right? A is actually true. So true and false, right? So when we're using an AND operator, both conditions need to be true. If you have one of them being false, the ultimate outcome will be false as well. All right. So ultimately, this entire complex condition would turn out to be false. All right. So now I know this may be a lot to take in for some of you. All right. Um, let's take some time to sink it in. All right. It's already 5 p.m. right now. Let's take a 5 minutes break. We'll be back at 5:07. All right. Take a quick water break, toilet break if you need one. And when we are back, we're gonna use this logical operator in practice for our coding. Okay. And we're gonna code a somewhat similar program that can help you determine whether you should wear an XS or an S or a M size for a Uniqlo. Okay. All right. Let me just check the chat. What are all the symbols again? PEMDAS in math. Yes, PEMDAS is the operator precedence. What are all the symbols like? That's your relational operator. Okay, for those who are interested with the operator precedence, I can just paste the link here for all of you. It's publicly available on the internet anyway. All right. Okay, so hopefully everyone's back, right? 5:07. Okay, let's do a bit of stretching, all right? um, okay, so let's try to create a program that helps us determine if we are gonna wear S, M, L, or XL. Okay, let's just keep it simple. We're not gonna go all the way to 4XL, and we're not gonna go all the way to XXS as well. Right, so I'm just gonna start from XS all the way to XL, and that's it, right? So we have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 options, okay? And if you realize, they actually take into consideration your height, your chest, and your waist. What I'm going to do is I am actually going to take into consideration only the height and chest. Okay, if I were to take into the waist as well, that would mean the complex condition will need to have 3 different conditions, okay, which can be a bit confusing and a bit complicated. Let's start with something simple first, okay? But of course, for those who wants a challenge, feel free to include your ways as well, right? I'm gonna paste the link of the Uniqlo size chart for those who are interested, okay? And let's program this, all right? I'm gonna go back to my Replit. So obviously we will need our user to input the height. Okay, what's your height? Okay, and if I know that I need this to be an integer, I would have cast it into an integer before we move on, right? Then let's get the chest measurement as well. All right, so chest input. What's your chest measurement? Right? In cm, all right? We're not gonna do inches or feet, all right? We do it the SI unit way, okay? Then I am going to int this as well. Okay. So once we have gotten this information, now it is time to program the checks. Okay. Since there are 2 conditions to check, we will need to use the logical operators, right? So let's go for the first one, XS. Okay, so XS mentions that my height needs to be between 155 to 165. Okay, so if, oops, sorry, if, all right, always start with the if keyword, my height is between 155 to 165, all right, and my chest measurement is between 80 to 88, okay, and my chest measurement is between, oops, sorry, between 80 is less than equals to chest is less than equals to 88, right? This should also be less than equals to. Okay, sounds about right. Okay, never mind. I should just put this as less than, right? Because 88 and 165 can also be S. Okay, what I'm gonna do over here is I'm gonna say that your size is XS. Similarly, Alif, all right, 165 less than equals to height less than 175, and the weight is about 88 to 96. 88 less than equals to chest less than 96. Size would be S. Okay, Alif, 175 is less than equals to height less than 185, and what's the chest measurement? This is from 96 to 104. Okay, size is M. All right, Alif, let's go for the L. L have the same height, right? So I'm gonna be lazy and copy paste this. Okay. And then for the chest measurement, it will be 104 to 112. Okay, if you're at home, try to follow along, all right? Because by watching other people code, you will not improve in your coding. Just saying. All right, so we have size L. Okay, and then last but not least, I'm gonna do this, right? Alif, my size is XL. Okay, and same height. Okay, apparently they didn't factor in anyone that's gonna be taller than 185 cm. And then I am going to set the chest measurement to 112 to 120. Okay, so given this will be XL. All right, so any other size that I am not aware of, I'm just gonna say that size is unknown. Okay, so I am going to print this at the end of the program. Okay. given your height of height cm and chest measurement of chest cm, your shirt size should be size, right? So there we have it. We have a program that's going to check what size are we going to wear. Okay, so let's see if the first one works, right? So if I have 155 cm height and my chest measurement is about 80, this should show me that my shirt size should be XS, all right? Well, it's correct so far. Okay. Okay, and then we can run to say that, you know, if my height is, let's say 200, oh, 200 is out of the bounds, right? So maybe 180, and then I have a chest of 100, okay. Our size should be M, okay, because I'm actually at this position over here. All right, now of course, if you have an outlier case, right, let's say maybe you run this again, and you will realize that your height is 200 and your chest is beyond measurement as 200, right? So if you have such a measurement that is not in our system, I would just print that, hey, your shirt size is unknown. All right. So I cannot measure that, right? Okay, so that's how you use your AND operator, right? You need to meet both the height and the chest. Okay, so let me show you what happens if I only meet one of them. Okay, so if I meet the first one, let's say my height is 160, all right, but my chest, right, it's not within the range of 80 to 88. Okay, so let's say I go above 88, maybe it's 90. All right, when I do this, my result will appear to be unknown. All right, because I will not be able to meet the first condition. All right, the first complex condition requires my height to be in the range between 155 to 165 cm, where my chest measurement needs to be between 80 to 88 cm. Okay, my height is able to meet. Okay, 160 is able to meet this first condition. It will appear to be true. However, because my chest measurement turns out to be 90 instead of any number that's between 80 to 87, right? Because it's less than 88 over here, right? So this number is beyond this range, right? So this will appear to be false. Okay, and when you have true, okay, let me just write it in the Python way, true and false, right? Remember what I mentioned about an AND operator? It requires both conditions to be true in order for this entire complex condition to be evaluated as true. Okay, understand that? This entire is a complex condition, okay? Of course, if I were to change this to OR, all right, then that would be a different matter. Okay, if I do 160 and my measurement is 90, I will still be able to get XS. All right, now why is that so? Because I have actually met one of the condition over here, right? My height is within the range of 155 to 165. And when this condition turns out to be true, I actually don't really care if the second one is false, all right? Because at this point, I would know that my complex condition would definitely be true, okay? As long as one of the condition is true, all right, the complex condition would turn out to be true. Okay, so this is the risk that you are running when you're using the OR operator. Okay, so N is a bit more strict, right? Where you need to check for both conditions. Okay, so this is the usage of logical operator. Okay, so with that said, all right, this is the practice that we are going to do for logical operator. The next one that I'm going to introduce is actually how we can import modules from other people's code. Excuse me. All right. So the next step is to learn about modules and loops. All right. Eventually, we want a computer to repeatedly do something, right? I don't want to just ask for your height and chest, give you your shirt size, and that's about it, right? I want it to ask again and again and again, right? Maybe. So if that's the case, I will need something called a loop. All right. So let me just comment out all of these. Okay, comment out. And we will move on to the next section. All right, so on the first day, I mentioned that Python is a growing community, right? A lot more people are actually using Python nowadays, and they're coming out with all sorts of uh, code to help us, right, in a way that we don't have to code it ourselves, right? We just have to go to their code and get an excerpt of their functions, and we can call it our own, right? We can use it as if it's our own, okay? And that actually saves us a lot of time, right? Because we don't have to create a function anymore that does the same thing, all right? So let me just give you a very quick example over here to show you what I mean by that. So there is this module called random. Okay, now to import something, all right, to import something is like to tell the computer, hey, I want you to go to the library and get me this book, right? Because I'm going to read it. Okay, so we use the keyword import. And then you key in the module name, right? There is random. Okay, I'm going to introduce random first, right? There's a few other modules that we're going to use. Okay. Why is it a yellow squiggly line? Okay, never mind that. So what I'm going to do over here is I am going to use one of the function that's in the random module. Okay, and this function is called rand in. Oh, I know why is it the green squiggly line is there. It's probably telling me that I'm not using it yet. Okay, so rand in is a function that returns a random integer. Okay, as the name suggests, it's a random integer. And since it's a function, it needs to be executed using a bracket, right? Remember, all functions, if you want to execute it, you must put a bracket behind it, right? And this randin function actually takes in two inputs, all right? So it will random between the starting integer all the way to the ending integer, right? So if I would write this down, right, this is a function that takes in two numbers, okay? The start and the end. Okay, let's say maybe you want to have a start of 0 all the way to 9, right? It will give you a random integer that is between 0 to 9, inclusive of the number, right? Inclusive of 0 and 9. So let's say, for example, I want to create a dice program, right? 1 to 6. Okay, this is going to return a number to me, and I can save it. Okay, I can save it in a variable called dice, for example. And then I can print the dice. Okay, maybe I'll just do a F string again to just keep you guys revised. The result of the dice roll is dice. Okay, when I run this, I will have 1. Okay, and I run it again, I will have 2. I run it again, I would have 2. Right, so okay, as you can see, the numbers are being randomized. Now, do I need to do anything to, like, do I need to write any code to have this random integer? I don't need to, right? I just need to call the function and that's it, right? Such is the beauty of functions, right? I don't need to know what's happening behind the scenes. I don't know what's happening behind to generate this number from 1 to 6, but I just need to know how to use it, right? I just need to key in my numbers 1 to 6 and then that's it. Okay, and of course, there are a few ways to import modules, right? On the internet, some of them may do something like this, right? Import random as R. Okay, this is you trying to tell the computer, hey, I want you to import this random module for me, and I am going to rename it as R. Okay, so when you call a function, all right, you don't refer it to random.randin anymore, right? You call it r.randin. Okay, and this will work out just fine. Now, there is one part where I forgot to mention, and I'm going to do it now, right? So notice how I use the dot over here, right? On the first day itself, we mentioned that there are certain symbols in Python that we need to recognize, right? Dot is one of them, right? When you see the dot symbol, it means that the thing on the right belongs to the thing on the left, okay? Is it mentioned? This is actually a function that belongs to the random module. Okay, it does not exist in this program right? It exists in some other people's module, right? I'm just borrowing it over. Okay, so if I were to remove this r dot over here, you will immediately see this squiggly line, right? What is the squiggly line telling you, right? It is the computer telling you that, hey, there is no such function as rent in. I can't find this, right? So when I run this, rent in is not defined. Hey, dude, I can't find rent in, right? So you need to tell the computer, hey, this is not my function. This is some other people's function, right? R dot rent in, then you will be able to do so. Okay, now, of course, if you just need a single function from the module, you can also do something like this. Okay, what I can do is I can do from random import rent int. Okay, now if this is the case, then you can just use the rent int as is because you have imported the function over. All right, so when I run it, you will still be able to run it without calling the random.randin. Now, there is a risk over here when you're using this method. Okay, this is what we will usually call it as the namespace pollution. Okay, what's gonna happen is what if you want to define your own function called rent in again in the future, or what if you use this name before? Okay, if you have used this name before, it will now be replaced with this particular function. Okay, so let's say, for example, my initial function of rent_in is supposed to do something else. But now because I've imported rent_in from random, it has overwritten this. Overwritten. Just like how our variables can only have one piece of information at a time. Okay, so the best practice, all right, at least for me, all right, for beginners, all right, is to actually import the entire module, all right, like this, okay? And if you're going to use it quite often, then you can rename it as R, right? Because you don't want to type random every single time, right? But if you're not going to do that, you can just import random and that's it. It's perfectly fine, right? So it's just extra 5 keystrokes, okay? And if you want to import another module, you can either do a comma like this, or you can go to the next line and input another one called time. All right, so there are a lot of different modules out there, and in this course, I will use random and time quite often. Okay, so in the meantime, let me just have a look at the chat. I can see a few messages popping up. Let's see. Okay, when you have an indentation error, check for the indentation, right? Whether you have tapped the correct number of times. If we have 3 conditions, do we need to include 2 ends? Yes, if you want to write 3 conditions, then you need to have 2 ends. How to show all the function that's in the import? 1 and 6 will be inclusive, yes. Okay, if you want to see all the functions that's in import, you can do something like, let me try this. I think it's called the dir. Let me try to print random dot underscore underscore dir underscore underscore. Okay, run. Yeah, this is everything that's inside. All right. Now, but of course, the best way to find out, all right, to be honest, right, if you want to learn more about a module, okay, you can always refer to what we call the documentations. Documentation. Okay, let me just quickly guide you guys along to Python documentation. All right, so you can just type Python documentation random. And you'll be able to see this docs.python.org library random, right? So this is the official documentation of your random module, right? If you want to learn about the different functions that's available in this random module, you can have a look at this particular page over here. Okay, let me just quickly guide some of you on how to read this. Obviously, these are all English. And you'll see that, hey, this random.seed is actually a function, and it takes in two argument. All right, I'm going to talk about parameters and argument in lesson 4, which is on Thursday. But for now, let's just take it like that this is an input, right? So if you see that there are two inputs over here, that means your random.seed can take in two input. Okay, can take in two input. Now, there is another thing that is this equal sign over here, right? It is assign a value. That means, all right, this function has a default value for these inputs. Okay, if you're just gonna call it random dot seed, it will work just as normal. All right, it wouldn't raise an error. Okay, however, if you have a function like this, random.randBytes, and that means you need to actually key in the number of random bytes. All right, there is no default value for this. You need to key in yourself. Okay, all right, A, B, and stuff. All right, so let's say random.choices. All right, you have population weights equals none, and then chemical weights. Right. So when you see this equal sign, that means there's a default value. Print random.random. Okay, so let's go back. All right, so now that we have cleared about this import part, let's move on to loops. Okay, so the next part is on loops. And we use loops when we want a computer to repeat things over and over again. All right, my favorite example for this again is your traffic light, right? So if you've been driving or you've been taking public transport, you will definitely come across traffic lights, right? And traffic lights are supposed to turn from green to yellow to red and then to green again, all right? And they will turn automatically, right? You don't expect to see someone programming the traffic light besides the traffic light, right? Like, oh, it's now time to turn green. It's now time to turn yellow. Okay, if you have someone that's gonna program that 24/7, it is impossible, right? Someone needs to sleep, eat, and stuff, right? Needs to go to the toilet and stuff. So we need the traffic light to actually automate itself. Okay, and this idea of automation, right, requires a loop, right, to get a computer to repeat the same thing over and over again. And there are a few ways to write loops in Python. Okay, I'm gonna go through some of the ways here. Okay, and I want you to realize that there are also different types of loop. Okay, there are loops that doesn't stop, and there are loops that will stop eventually. Okay, so let's just do that one at a time. So the keyword that we're going to use for today is while. That's a bit strange. While I in range is okay, I think it works, but you can use a for loop as well. Okay, so let me just comment this out. Okay, let's take a look at the new keyword called while. While is very much like if, but instead of doing it once, a while loop will be executed as long as the condition remains true. All right, now remember this. If statements will only be executed if the condition is true, and they will only be executed once. All right, whereas for a while loop, as long as the condition is true, the action is going to be taking place. All right. Now, the first loop that I'm going to introduce to you guys is called the infinite loop. So, infinite loop. Why do I call it infinite loop? Right? An infinite loop is a loop that, as the name suggests, goes on infinitely. Right? It will never stop. Okay. So, how do you write an infinite loop? You just do while true. Okay. True is going to be the condition over here. Right? And as the as it will always be true, this will always execute. All right, because the condition always turns out to be true. It will never be false, right? So while true, we can do something like print hello. Okay, now of course, because the computer runs code very, very rapidly, right? This hello is going to print out very rapidly on my screen if I don't do something about it. Okay, so I don't want that to happen. I would just, actually I want to give it a try. Maybe not, maybe just run this and see how fast it can go. Bam, all right, it'll create a lot of hello very quickly and it will eat up a lot of my memory. So let's stop this. Okay, so there is possibly thousands and millions of hello are over there. Right? I'm not sure how many hellos have been generated over the past 1 or 2 seconds. All right, but you'll see that the computer is actually printing at a very fast speed, right? If you want a computer to slow down, all right, there is such a thing called time.sleep, right? So let's import time as a module, all right? And let's call this function time.sleep. So time.sleep is a function that takes in a number of seconds, right? As the description over here tells you, all right? And this number of seconds will be delayed before the next line is being executed. All right. So if some of you have learned Scratch in school before or learned Scratch from somewhere else before, you will realize that this is actually your wait a number of seconds, right? So if I want this computer to wait every 0.5 seconds before saying the next hello, I will just put a time.sleep 0.5 like this. So when I run this, you'll see hello, 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 every 0.5 second. Okay, and because this is an infinite loop, it will not stop unless I click on the stop button. All right, now there is another way to actually stop a infinite loop, okay, which is called your break statement. Okay, I'm going to introduce the break statement over here, right? So I am going to do this differently. So while true, I would get the user to import, do you want to stop the program? Okay, and then I will save this in your answer. All right, so this is just me trying to get the user to input whether they want to stop the program or not. Okay, and if I want to be specific, I want you to only key in Y or N. Okay, so it's either yes or no. All right, and in this if statement, I will just write this, right? If my answer is equals to Y, all right, in capital letter, all right, then I would break. Okay, break is a statement that stops the current loop. Okay, it will break you out of the loop. Okay, now this will only break you out of your current loop. If you have a nested loop, that means a loop inside a loop, you will only break out of the loop that you're currently in. All right, your outer loop will still go on. Okay, now if this is too confusing, then don't really need to remember this. Just remember that break statements always stops the loop. All right, the loop that you're currently in. Okay, so let me run this. Do you want to stop the program? Let's say N. Okay, if the answer is N, it will move on, right? So if it's Y, it should stop. But because it's not capital Y, it will move on, all right? Now, how do I make sure everything is capitalized? Okay, there is a string method called your dot upper. Okay, and we can actually put it behind the input over here, right? Because input will always return a string, I can just connect it with dot upper. Okay, what am I doing over here is I'm basically just doing this. Answer is assign answer dot up upper. Okay, and that's about it, right? Upper is a method that changes all the characters within the string to your uppercase. All right, and of course you will also have your lower, right? If you want to change this to a lowercase y, okay, you can also change this to lower. Right, up to your design. Okay, I'm just going to leave it as upper. Okay, and let me just remove this. If I run this, all right, if I just type the normal small letter y, oops, y is not defined. Wait a minute. Let me run this. Okay, I may need to refresh. Oh, okay, it's out. All right, so let me click on y. It will stop the loop. Okay, because when it's a small letter y subjected to an upper method, it is now a capital letter Y. All right, so if your answer is equals to capital letter Y, I am going to break it. That means I'm going to stop the loop. Okay, so let me run this again to demonstrate. Okay, if it's any number, any alphabet, all right, it wouldn't respond. It wouldn't stop the program until I say Y. Then it will stop, right? So break is a statement that terminates the current loop, okay? Ends the current loop, all right? Especially useful if you have a while loop that goes on forever. Okay, so the next loop that I'm gonna explore over here is a while loop that is eventually gonna come to an end, all right? So let's do this. Okay, let me just delete all of this because we don't need this anymore. All right, so let's say I want to create a loop, but I do not know when is it gonna end, all right? But I do know the conditions for it to end, right? So a very good example for our daily life is this, right? When you brush your teeth, you will brush until it is clean, right? But do you know how many cycles of brushing do you need to do before it's clean? You may not, right? Okay, so in order to do that, we need to first define the function. Sorry, not define the function. We need to define the condition for your loop to end. All right, so let's say while, okay, let me delete all this. While teeth is not equals to clean, brush. Right, so this is just a rough idea on how it works, right? So as long as your teeth is not clean, right, as long as this is true, you will need to brush, okay? The moment your teeth is clean, all right, this will turn out to be false, right? So when your condition is false, the loop will stop, okay? So let's just do a simple one on numbers. So I import random over here again. Okay, I'm gonna remove the die stuff. So let's say I want to write something as this. Number is equals to random dot rand in 1 to 10. Okay, so as long as my number is not equals to 5, I want the computer to keep generating a new number, right? So I'm first gonna print the number, and then I am going to generate a new number. Okay, actually, I should generate first before I print. Okay, let me just do this twice. Okay, and the moment I reach the number 5, this loop will stop, right? So I will just print at the end of the loop. Okay, if you realize this set of actions that is inside the while loop, okay, there is an indentation over here, right? That means this will happen as long as the while loop is ongoing, okay? And this, because this line 64 over here is out of the while loop, all right, it is not being indented by any means. This will only happen when the while loop has completed. Okay, let me just print this out for you, all right? Yay. I got number 5. All right, let me just quickly explain what's going on over here. Now, I will first generate a number from 1 to 10, okay? And then when I reach the next line, the computer will check that, hey, as long as the number is not equals to 5, right? So of course, there may be a chance that 1 to 10 may immediately be 5, right? So if it's not, this loop will ongoing until the number 5 has been obtained. Okay, and when that 5 has been achieved, this loop will stop, and then you will get this print over here. So let's demonstrate this. All right, oh, 6, 2, 5. Immediately on the third number, I got my 5. Let me run this again. Okay, a few times, you realize that, hey, I will eventually have 5, but the number of times the loop has been executed varies. All right, so it depends on the luck as well, right? How often would you get your 5 within 5 turns and stuff? So when you are writing a loop that is eventually going to stop, we call this the finite loop, right? It's like infinite loop, but without the in. Okay, infinite loop is a loop that goes on forever. Okay, whereas finite will eventually come to a stop. All right, but you do not know when is it gonna stop. Right, you only know the condition. Then you will use this while loop. Okay, you will set a condition for it to stop. Okay, as long as your number is not equals to 5, you will keep going. All right, now we are gonna have exercises for this, obviously, so don't worry too much about this. All right, so this is the while loop. Now, the other loop that I want to tell you is a loop that you can actually count, all right, how many times have the loop has been ongoing. All right, so let's say if you want to run the loop 5 times, all right, if you are going to use the while loop over here, you need to initialize a new variable called count that helps you count, keep track on how many times have you run this code. Okay, let me just create a while loop that helps you in your countdown and your count up function. Okay, so I'm just going to remove all this. Okay, and to do that, you will introduce a new variable called count. Okay, and if you're gonna do a count up, that means you're gonna go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 and so on. All right, this is me counting up, right? Then your count should start with a 0. However, if you are counting down, you should start with the number that you count down with. All right, let's say if you count down 60 seconds, then you go with 60. Okay, so what I'm going to do over here is I am going to count up first, right? So while I will start with count equal to 0. If I want my loop to run exactly 10 times, all right, I'm going to do this, right? While count is less than 10, okay, I am going to print my count like this, right? I have run this loop and sorry, count plus 1 times. Okay, now why is it plus 1? Because at the first count it is a 0, right? I wouldn't say I have run this loop 0 times, right? Okay, and then let me just put a bracket on the s because 1 time is just time. Okay, now every time this loop is being executed, you will want to update the count variable, right? So count is plus equals to 1. Okay, now plus equals to 1 is another way of me writing this. All right, count equals to count plus 1. Okay, this is the same as this. All right, count plus equals 1 is count equals to count plus 1. Same thing. Okay, of course you can do this with your multiplication, division as well, right? You can do your multiplication equals, division equals, minus equals, floor division equals, right? Modulus equals also can. Okay, so now when I run this, you'll be able to see that I have run this loop 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times. Okay, now some of you will tell me that, Mr. YY, I actually learned a for loop before, so I can also use a for loop to do that. Now, correct. If you have learned a for loop before, okay, then you can just write this, right? A for loop is even easier, right? For I in range 10, right? The number that you want to run, okay, let's say if you want to have 10 loops, you do 10, and then you just print, I have run this loop. Okay, Now, instead of count, I'm going to do I plus 1 times. Okay. Okay, because this doesn't turn white, it tells me that something is wrong, and apparently I forgot to put the F over here for F strings. Okay, so if I run this, I have 2 of the same result. Okay, you can use a for loop or a while loop. Now, of course, if you know how to use a for loop for this purpose, you can just use a for loop because it's actually shorter, right? There's only 2 lines, and you don't even need to remind yourself to update the count. All right, because it updates automatically over here for your for loop. Okay, let's say, for example, you have forgotten to update your count over here. Okay, what's going to happen is this. It will become an infinite loop. All right, why? Because when your count is not being updated, it will always remain at 0. And because it's always 0, it is always less than 10. Okay, so this will keep execute until you have manually stopped it or until it meets a break statement. Okay, all right, so if you know a fixed number of time that you want your loops to be executed, usually we will use the for loop. Okay, however, if you are more familiar with the while loop, there is no wrong in doing so. Okay, just do whatever is more comfortable for you. All right, now, of course, this is just a count up. What about count down, right? So let's do a countdown timer. Okay, I'm going to do it with the while loop again. All right, and then I'm going to show you how to do it with the for loop for those who are interested. So I'm going to delete this. Okay, let's say, for example, I start with 60. All right, so countdown would usually wants you to count down all the way down to 0, right? So I am going to count down while my count is more than 0. That means, right, my count, as long as it is more than 0, it should keep ticking downwards, right? So now no longer plus equals, it is minus equals. All right, and then instead of I have run this loop how many times, maybe I'll do this instead, right? Time remaining is count, and I don't need to plus 1 here, is how many seconds. All right, and if I want to make this a bit more realistic, right, let me count down every 1 second. Okay, I can do something like import time, okay, and only run this every 1 second. Excuse me. Time.sleep 1. Okay, so what am I doing over here is I am going to print time remaining 60 seconds and then I minus 1. Okay, after 1 second, it will print time remaining 59 seconds and then I minus 1 again. All right, let's just try to run this. And because I don't want to waste all of you for 1 minute, I'm just going to reduce this to maybe 20 seconds. Okay, let's just see how it works. Okay. Okay, let me run this. Okay, clear. Oop, it stopped at 1 second. All right. Now, when it doesn't show you the 0, it is because when your count is at 0, all right, when your count is at 1 over here, it minus 1, it becomes 0, right? When your count is 0, it is not more than 0, all right? So it will not execute in this while loop, okay? So you will not see your 0 second. All right, it's perfectly fine to make mistakes every now and then when you're coding, right? I make mistakes sometimes too, right? Actually, most of the time, right? But the most important thing is when you make mistakes like this, you know how to tweak your code to achieve your final result, right? So in this form, I am going to tweak it to, let's say, maybe if more than 0 is not going to achieve me the goal that I want, maybe more than -1, all right? It may work, okay? Or for me, a more elegant way is to maybe just say more than or equals to 0. All right, it will also work. Okay, so when I do this, I will have your countdown. Okay, this will be the countdown when I run it. 20, 19, 18. All right, and it will only do so every 1 second because I have a time.sleep1 over here. All right. Okay. Okay. There are actually 22 messages. I'm quite tempted to look at the messages, but I just want to do a quick one on the for loop as well, right? If you want to achieve the same idea with for loop, you will need to do some changes to your range as a function. Okay. So I'm just gonna demonstrate real quick. Okay, for I in range. Okay, I'm gonna comment this out. In range of 20 to -1. All right, step by -1. Okay, now why am I writing it this way? Okay, so range as a function, okay, by right, it is to create a sequence of numbers. Okay, so when I do range 10, I am actually creating a number from 0 by default all the way up to 10, but not including 10. Okay, it's all the way from 0 to 9, but not including 10, right? That's how range works. Okay, it creates a sequence of number starting by default 0. All right. However, if you indicate another parameter in front of it, all right, this will be your starting number. Okay, so my starting number will be 20 instead. Okay, and my ending will be -1. All right, so remember what I mentioned about range ending? It is all the way up to, but not including, right? 10 is not including. So in this case, -1 is not including, right? So maybe it will go all the way down to 0 and that's it. It wouldn't go all the way up to -1, right? Stops here. Okay, and the third input is actually the steps. What do I mean by step? If you have not input any number over here, the default number will always be 1. All right, that means it will increase by 1. Okay, but because I indicated to be -1, the next number to be generated after the first number 20 is going to be -1, -1, -1, -1, and so forth until it reaches 0. Okay, so this is how range function works. Okay, if you do not indicate any starting or step number, if you just do a simple range like this, this will give you a sequence of number from 0 to 9. However, if you indicate the starting number, let's say maybe 2 to 10, then this will generate you a sequence of number from 2 all the way to 10, but not including 10. Okay, and when you have a step, let's say maybe like this, 2, 10, 2, okay, you are going to create a sequence of numbers 2, 4, 6, 8, and that's it. All right, it will not include 10. Okay, and they will increase by the step of 2 every single time. Okay, and these numbers will take turn to occupy the variable I. All right, now more information about for loop will be explained tomorrow. So here is just a quick taste of for loop, right? It will actually be covered not tomorrow, the day after tomorrow. Tomorrow is on data structures. Okay, so if I do this and then I print, actually, I should just do this. Okay, now I'm just gonna paste here, uncomment it, okay, reverse shift, all right, instead of count, it is now I. Okay, and when I run this, oh, it come out in an instant because there's no time.sleep. All right, so time now is 5:57, right? We are going to take another break over here while I look at your messages. Okay, so maybe we take a bit longer break because there's a bit of tougher concepts being introduced over here. So let's take an 8 minutes break. Okay, so and I can take some time to read your messages as well. And in the meanwhile, I'm just going to set this timer, right? So 8 times 60 is 480. Okay. So I have for 80 seconds. I will use this as my timer for the break. Okay. Time dot sleep 1. Okay, let's run this. All right. Okay, I'm gonna look at some of the messages. If you want to try redo, you can try Shift Control Z, or Shift Command Z if you're using Mac. What is the usual purpose of a loop? A loop is when you want a computer to do something on its own repeatedly, right? Let's say, for example, your elevator door. Okay, you will want the computer to continuously check if someone is in front of the elevator door. If there is, then it will open up. All right. If there is no people, then it will just continuously close it, right, on its own. Okay, so that's loop. And what's another good example? Your traffic lights. That's my best example, right? So traffic lights are supposed to change from red to yellow to green and stuff, right? And you don't expect a human being to be there all the time to program the traffic lights to change its color, right? So we usually program a program that it will run on its own, right? There's a loop over there that checks for, if the condition for a green light is met, I will show green light. If the condition for the yellow light is met, I will show yellow light instead. If the condition for red light is met, I will show red light. All right. So it will just keep repeating again and again and again and again. If you just use a singular if, Alif, else for that manner, all right, for that case, the traffic lights will only change lights once. Okay, but if you use a loop, it will keep checking and then change lights accordingly. All right. To select all, you can Command A, Taurus, and then to make them all command, you can Command / or Control / if you're using Windows. If you want to remove the console, then you need to clear it. I'm not sure what is the command for this Jupyter to be clear, but if I remember correctly, in an IPython module, there is one that helps you clear display. Maurice asks if there is any module that contains function to calculate probability related things like permutation and combination, and the answer is yes, there is. So when it comes to permutation and combination, you're usually talking about like data science, right? And Python has a lot of modules that support that. One of them, if I remember correctly, is your pandas. Then you also have scikit-learn. I think there's also NumPy that helps with probability. What else is there? cplot, I think, SNS. Yeah, there are quite a few number of modules out there that helps with probability calculations. Is there a keyword code to automatically clear the module? Unfortunately, no. To clear the module, you need to interact. Sorry, to clear the clear the module. I mean, if you're talking about clearing the console, then you will need to have IPython. You usually don't want something to clear the module. All right, I'm actually going to drink some water. Yeah, so clearing the console, that's an answer that I can't give you, but you can ask Mr. Google. All right, so that's how we programmers learn, right? If you find out something that you don't know, it's time to ask Google. Okay, let's try that out. Let's check. How to clear console in Replit. To exit, Control C. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, import Replit, replit.clear. Import OS, os.system, clear. See? You can try this out. All right, import Replit and replit.clear. Some of them say none of the methods work though. Okay, I can try it out. Let's go. But I don't want to interrupt this time though. Okay, maybe Xiu Wei Heng, you can try it out. You let me know whether it works. All right, import Replit and then replit.clear bracket. Okay. Come on, do a bit of stretching. How long is the break? Look at the time remaining. It's on my screen. I have 2 seconds remaining. Can I see your screen again? I am actually sharing my screen. Yeah. Can you see my screen? It's covered by text. Oh, sorry. Is that 10? Oh, it's actually over. Okay, cool. All right, so break's over. Now, let's continue. We are going to close off the loop with a few more practice, simple ones, all right? Now that we have learned our while loops and we have learned the if statements, we can actually create some simple games, right? For you to have fun with your friends. So one of my favorite is when I'm doing it with my students, right, is guess a number. Okay, so you can set a secret number and you can get your friend to actually guess it. Okay, now tic-tac-toe may not be easy though. Okay, but if you want to, you can also try that out. All right, so let's do something simple with guess a number first, right? So what's gonna happen over here is import. Okay, let me see. Do I have random up there? Usually when we import something, all right, so by the way, detour, you should do it at the top of your program. Okay, actually I don't need all this, right? I can just delete all of this away. So I'm just gonna delete all of this away. Okay, and we're gonna program a program called guess a number. Okay, so this guess a number, I will just import a random number. Okay, so the idea is this, right? I would get a computer to give me a magic number that is randomized. Okay, maybe I randomize from 1 to 100. Okay, and I want my user to make a guess. Okay, so let's take a guess. Right, input. give me a number. Okay, now this is where I start to implement something called the, to clear screen, there's an X button. AI player versus, yes, we are gonna do scissors, paper, stone. Braden, have you done scissors, paper, stone before? Okay, we can do scissors, paper, stone. All right, cool. You can even do a player versus player, scissors, paper, stone. All right. Now, let's just do a guess a number first, right? So if you want to make sure that this input is in fact a number, you can do this, right? While guess dot is numeric, while not guess numeric. Okay, what's happening over here is, as long as your guess is not a number, you would get your user to input it again. Okay, so this is how I would intervene over preventing input that is not number, right? So once I figure out is this a number, okay, I can do guess is equals to int guess right now, okay, to make sure that it is now an integer, right? Remember, input always gives you a string, right? And then we can now get the computer to run this. Okay, so if guess is equals to the magic number, you would say print, hooray, you guessed it correct. Okay, else, oops, you guessed it wrong. And then maybe you want to print the final number, which is the print the secret number is actually magic num. Okay, so let's do something like this, right? So I run this. Okay, I give a number. Let's say maybe lol. Nope, not a number, not accepted. Okay, maybe 88a. Nope, not a number, not accepted, right? This is the while loop here doing its work. Okay, and then if I give it a number, let's say maybe 66. Oops, you guessed it wrong. The secret number is 83. Now, when you make a game like this, obviously, this will only run once, right? So you want to run this a few times, right? So to run this a few times, of course, you can do something like a while loop or using a for loop, right? Depending on how many times you want this to run. Okay, so let's say, for example, I want to run this like 5 times, right? I want to give my user 3 different tries. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I am going to create a for loop, okay, for I in range 3, right? So this is going to run 3 times, right? Whatever that's inside the for loop is going to run 3 times. Okay, now remember there is a colon that's behind the for loop, right? Now, whatever that's going to be inside the for loop needs to be indented. You need to have an indentation, right? Remember how to create multi-line indentation? We can select multiple lines like this and then click on the tab key. Okay, so for I in range 3, and I can also print out the round, right? I can print F, right? So this is round number I plus 1. Okay, now why I plus 1? Because range always starts with 0, right? So I can do a round 1, give me a number, round 2, round 3, and so forth. Okay, and if you notice, there is actually a while loop contains diverge. Choose my changes. Okay. All right. Let's get back to this. Where was I? We are trying to find out that, okay, there's a while loop inside a for loop. Okay, now this is what we call a nested loop. Okay, just an idea of nesting. All right, when you say something that's nesting, you have something inside another something, right? So I said nested loop means a loop inside a loop. Okay, while loop is a loop, and this is a loop, and then this is the outer loop. Okay, so if I have a break over here, I will only stop this loop. I will not stop the loop that's outside. Okay, a break will only stop the current loop. It will not stop the entire loop. Okay, so with that said, all right, let's do this. Okay, let's try and see if we can guess it. Okay, round one, give me a number. 88. Oh, wrong. 55. Wrong. 33. Also wrong, right? Number is 76. Of course, we can make this to be a bit more exciting. Like if you guess a number that is higher or lower, you will need to tell the computer will tell you whether you have guessed it either lower or higher, right? So I can actually set it. Sorry, I can actually give some condition on that, right? I can write Alif guess is more than magic number. Okay, I can write something like, oops, you guessed it wrong. The secret number is lower. Okay, at least you give some hints to your friend, right? Then you also have else. You can do print this. Oops, you guessed it right. You guessed it wrong. The secret number is higher. Okay, so if I guess a number that's greater than the magic number, it will tell me that, hey, my number is actually lower. Okay, if I guess something that it is lower than the magic number, it will tell me that my secret number is higher. Okay, and of course, I will need to tell the user, give me a number from 1 to 100. Okay, because I'm randomizing from 1 to 100, right? 1 to 100. Okay, so I can run this and let's try this out. So 55. Okay, I guessed it wrong. The number is lower. Okay, so it's lower than 55. Okay, maybe 40? Even lower than 40? Okay, maybe 33? Oh, wrong. It's actually even lower. It's actually 16. Okay. Now, of course, there are ways to make this even more fun. Like maybe if I set it to 55, it will tell me that the number is actually from 1 to 55 or so on. Okay. What's the purpose of writing a line of code twice? Okay, now why do I run it twice is because if I don't get the guess in the first place, all right, I will not be able to check if it's numeric or not. Okay, so the first is to actually obtain a data, and then it allows me to check whether is it a number or not. If it's not a number, I will need to get it again. All right, so that's the purpose of writing it twice. Okay, so of course here, if you want to tweak this, right, if you want to change this to have a number of rounds depending on your preference, all right, so you can actually select this range. Instead of range 3, you can input num rounds. Okay, set this to a variable. All right, so instead of having a fixed number of 3 rounds, you can actually get your user to do this. Check your spelling, Daisy. That's not the correct spelling. It's numeric, not numeric. Okay, so num rounds, I can get the user to actually input a number for me. Okay, so let's say, how many rounds do you want to play? Right, so I can get the user to input how many rounds do you think he will need to guess the number. Okay, and of course, we can also do the same check over here to check whether it's numeric or not. All right, so say while num while not num underscore rounds dot is numeric. You can do this check again. And then at the end of the check, we will just do num underscore rounds equals to int of num underscore rounds. Okay, so what am I doing over here is I'm allowing my user to decide how many rounds he or she require. Okay, so when I run this, how many rounds? Okay, let's play 5 rounds. Okay, so round 1, 55. Okay, high number higher. Okay, maybe 70s. Okay, oh, still higher. Okay, 90. Okay, between 90 to 70. Okay, maybe 80. Oops, I typed I typed on the chat. Sorry. Okay, higher than 80, lower than 90. Wow, my last try. Okay, 87. Oh, so close. 83. All right. So yeah. So this is my guess a number game. Okay, you can try it out. Okay, so the next game that I would want to introduce is, yeah, we can do scissors, paper, stone. All right. Or there is another one that's even simpler that I'm going to introduce first, which is your tortoise and hare game. Right. So most of you have heard of the fable of tortoise and hare, right? Where the tortoise is persistent and slow and steady, right? You always proceed one step at a time, where the rabbit can be lazy and sleep, right? So we can do a program that represents that, okay, to find out who actually won the race, okay? So I am going to delete all of this because this is recorded. You can refer to this on the video later on, okay? So let's delete all of this and just do a tortoise and hare race. Okay, so the idea is this, right? As long as my tortoise, okay, my tortoise and my hare, all right, they will start at the starting line of 0. As long as they have not reached the line of 50, which is my finishing line, okay, they would need to race. Okay, so how does the race go on? Okay, tortoise is gonna move one step at a time. All right, whereas the hare is going to move either 3 steps ahead, right? Because the hare being hare, they're fast, right? Or they will just move like -1, okay, which is uh going backwards, right? So it will go from -1, 0, 1, 2 to 3, right? So what we're gonna need is we need to have a random integer, right? So obviously we need to import the module of random, okay? And if I want them to raise this at every 0.5 second interval, I can also import the time module, okay? So let's see who reaches the finishing line first, all right? First thing first, I need to keep track of how many steps have the tortoise or the hare have taken, right? Have they reached the finishing line yet or not? Okay, so I'm gonna declare my variables as such, all right? So tortoise is gonna start at 0, hare is gonna start at 0, because at the beginning of the game, both of them have not made any move yet, right? Both of them start at 0. And my condition for the race is this, right? Both of them need to reach the finishing line of 50. So as long as my tortoise has not reached 50 and my hare has not reached 50, all right, I will need to keep this race ongoing. Now, a lot of my students actually have this mistake where they will write something very figuratively, right? Just as if they are writing an English essay, right? So, well, tortoise and hare is less than 50. Now, as much as Python is a high level programming language, this is not going to work, right? This is going to be understood at very differently, okay? At this point, because tortoise is holding the number of 0, this will always be false. All right, so false and true, this will always be false, right? This while loop will not go at all. Okay, so you cannot write something like this, right? Tortoise and hare less than 10, less than 50. It doesn't work out this way, right? You need to write out individually tortoise less than 50 and hare less than 50. Okay, then we move on to what's going to happen within the while loop. Okay, so inside this while loop, okay, before we even go into the action, right? Let me explain why do we use a while loop. We use a while loop because we do not know when is this loop going to end, right? I know that tortoise and this hare battle or this race is going to end eventually, but how many cycles will it take? Okay, how many times should this loop run in order for the race to end? We do not know, right? So I only know the condition for it to end, right? Which is for them to reach 50. Okay, so if I know the condition, I will use a while loop instead. However, if I know exactly how many times, I can use a for loop. Okay, I'm going to explain later on the for loop. So in this case, we are going to increase the steps, right? Every time the loop is being executed, they would have moved one step. Okay, now tortoise would definitely move one step forward. All right, remember plus equals means tortoise is equals to a tortoise plus one. Okay, I am actually getting its value to increase by one. However, for hare, all right, because hare is it may sometimes be lazy, right? So plus equals to the random integer of -1 to 3. Okay, now it's having a squiggly line over here, right, telling you that there's an error. Okay, and when you hover onto it, you will see that, oh, there is an undefined name random. Okay, telling us that we have not import our module called random yet. So let's import that module, right? Import random. Okay, when we import a module, we always put it at the top of the program. Okay, it is usually at the top. Now let's move on to the next part. Okay, every time you take a step, you will want to print the step out, right? To make sure that, oh, they have indeed taken that amount of steps, right? So I will print f, okay, hare, okay, hare is having this amount of steps, and then I will have tortoise having this amount of steps. Okay, so this is like a scoreboard, okay, for us to determine who is leading or who is not. Okay, so when I run this, oh, the hare wins, right? Now, of course, this goes on very quickly, right? So I want to clear this. We can use this X button over here to clear the console first. All right. If I want this to run slowly, okay, that means I need to have time.sleep, right? So I will just do time.sleep. Depending on how many seconds you want it to be slow down, right? So maybe 0.5 is a good range, okay? And then it will tell me that, oh, my time is not defined as well. So I can import my time. Okay, if you are going to import two different modules, you can do it in this manner, separate them into two different lines, or you can also do it in a single line manner like this, import, comma, time. Now, what is the difference between doing import time like this versus having it in a single line? If you have two different lines, all right, say for example, if you don't need this import anymore, you can just do a command / to comment it out, right? Which makes it very easy. However, if you have a multi-line like this, sorry, if you have all of the modules at one line like this, it makes commenting very difficult. Okay, so pros and cons, right? Usually you will want to separate them unless you are very sure that you're going to use this module. Okay, so when I do this, when I run it, okay, it will take some time. Then I can look at the chat first. Okay, see you, Trevor. All right. Okay, the hare is all right. As the moment one of them actually reaches the finishing line, right? Let's say the hare, it stops, right? The loop actually stops. Now, the next part is to actually determine who's the victor, right? So once the race has stopped, we need to announce the winner, right? We can't just leave it like this, right? We can't just say, oh, the race has stopped. That's it, right? So we need to announce the winner. Okay, to announce the winner, we need the computer to check who is actually winning, right? So obviously, all right, let's take a look. Okay, let's think about how many possible outcomes are there. Okay, in a race, okay, you can be either the hare is gonna win or the tortoise is gonna win, right? However, there is also an occasion, even though it's very rare, that it will have a draw. Okay, So there are three possible outcomes, and if Alif else will not be if else will not be able to meet this condition, because if else will only allow us two actions, right? Currently we need three actions, so we need if, Alif, and else, right? So when we are doing if, Alif, and else, we need to think about how best to position our condition, right? What I'm going to show you over here is if you position your conditions wrongly, you are going to get a wrong you're going to get a wrong outcome first. Okay, let me show you this, right? Let's say, for example, I choose to check for hair victory first. If hair is more than tortoise, okay, then I would say that this is print hair is victorious. Okay, and then Alif, okay, tortoise is more than hair. Okay, I will print that tortoise is victorious. Okay, and then the last but not least, there's a tie, right? Else, I'll just print it's a tie. Okay, now let me explain to you why would this potentially be wrong. Okay, now I'm not gonna go through the programming because it might take a while to replicate that scenario. What happens if your hair crosses the line, all right, at 49, and it gets a random number of 3, and you end up with 52? Okay, and this also happens when your tortoise adds 1, all right, and move on to step 50, right? Let's say, for example, this is the last step. Okay, who wins? Obviously it's a draw, right? Tortoise reaches 50 and then the hare reaches 52 first. But because we have preemptively put the condition of as long as hare is more than tortoise, the hare would be victorious. This line would be wrongly printed instead. Okay, the tie will be forego. All right, the computer will ignore the tie completely because you have met the first condition. It will just say that the hare is victorious. Now, some of you may argue, because the hare crossed the line first, what? But no, they actually crossed at the same time. It's just that the last step, the hare actually crossed with a bigger step than the tortoise. Okay, so it's a bit unfair, right? So when these things comes about, right, I will usually tell my student that when you are writing an if, Alif, else statement, always think about what is the least possible outcome. All right, that means the hardest to how do you say this? The hardest outcome to actually achieve, right? In this case, it's actually a tie, right? It's very rare to have a tie, okay? But having the hare or the tortoise to win is actually a 50-50 thing, right? It is not set in stone. But having a tie is actually much more rarer than the hare or tortoise being victorious, right? So the better way to write this is actually to print the tie first if both of them crosses the finishing line first, right? That means if my hare is more than equals to 50 and my tortoise is equals to 50. That means if both of them cross the finishing line first, it will be a tie. Okay. Now, however, if it's not a tie, then I would check whether my tortoise is having more steps than my hare. Because if my tortoise ends the race with more steps than my hare, that means my tortoise has crossed the finishing line first, right? Anything else will be my hare's victory. Okay, so that is that for hare and tortoise race. Okay, so let's say, for example, at this point, one of the hare or the tortoise is not satisfied with the results, right? And it says that, hey, I don't want you to race to the finishing line. Why not we do this, right? Let's just take 20 steps each and then and then gauge how far have we traveled within these 20 steps, right? So instead of using this as a condition, now we are having a different race, right? One of the tortoise or hare, right? The loser chose to get a second shot on the race, right? He wants to re-race, right? So the re-race would be whoever takes the most step in 20 steps. Okay, so there are two ways to write that. You can use a while loop with a counter to count the 20 steps, okay? Or you can use the tortoise as your step because tortoise always increase by 1, right? It's technically your step, right? Or you can actually use a for loop, okay? Now what I'm going to do over here is I'm going to use a for loop for that, okay? I'm going to make changes to this, right? So now I'm just going to call it, okay, so this is raise 1, right? I'm going to make some changes and change this to raise 2, okay? So I am going to change this part over here. Instead of them reaching the finishing line, I'm going to do for I in range of 20. That means I want them to take 20 steps, okay? And to show that they have indeed taken 20 steps, I am just going to print the steps number, okay? This is step number I plus 1, okay? And why is it I plus 1 again? Because I always starts with 0 when we use range like this. Okay, range 20 means I generate a sequence of number from 0 all the way up to 20, but not including 20, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 19, but not including 20. But because we have the number 0, it will have a sequence of 20 numbers, right? So this will run 20 times, okay? And then for that result, it will never reach 50, okay? Because 20 steps, all right, only the hair has a chance of reaching 20 if you hit 3 all the time, okay? So the condition for a tie would have to be changed, right? So currently, I'm not checking who reaches the finishing line first, right? I'm checking who takes the most number of steps in 20 steps, right? So the tie for this is when your hair take the same number of steps as your tortoise. Okay, so if they've taken the same number of steps after 20 steps, all right, that means it's a tie, all right? Else, it's the same. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate really quickly on how this works. Okay, I'm going to run this code. Oops, sorry, I accidentally stopped it. Okay, so 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 19, 20. All right, so after 20 steps, the tortoise have taken 20 steps, right? So tortoise is victorious. Okay, so this is the program for your tortoise versus hare. Okay, oops, sorry. As I was zooming in, I actually accidentally scrolled it, okay? All right, so with this said, I am going to move on to the scissors, paper, stone project. And that will be the last project for today because now it's 6:35, right? We only have like 24 minutes to go. Okay, so I'm just gonna run this one more time to show you again to see if hair really lose one more time. So we realize that the tortoise will actually take exactly 20 times, right? Because tortoise will always take one step at a time, right? So the hare is victorious this time around. Okay, perfectly fine. Okay, so the next project is on scissors, paper, stone. Okay, scissors, paper, stone can be a very long project or can be a very short project depending on how you want to program it, right? How perfect you want it to be. Okay, so I'm going to start with the easiest method first. Okay, that is to assume every condition is perfect. So scissors, paper, stone. Okay, of course, some of you may recognize this as rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, it depends on your region, right? So some of you may recognize this as rock, paper, scissors. But here in Singapore and back then in Malaysia, all right, we always call it scissors, paper, stone. Okay, so we are going to write a, not stop using iteration. Stone. Okay, so basically the idea is this, right? I want a computer to play a game of scissors, paper, stone with me. All right, and you can get the user to determine the round number or you can fix the number of rounds as well. All right, so let's say maybe I want to play 10 rounds of scissors, paper, stone. Okay, so I can do for I in range 10. Okay, and then I will print something like this, right? This is like round number I plus 1. Okay, so this will always be like round 1, round 2, round 3, all the way up to round 10. Okay, and I will need to get the user to actually key in his choice of weapon, right? So of course, this will be player. I will just do it as player W, all right? So you guys will understand that this is player weapon. Okay, you need to input your weapon. All right. Choose your weapon. All right. And of course, we must tell our user how do we choose, right? One is actually your scissors. Two is actually your paper. And three is actually your stone. Okay. So you will need to get your user to actually choose between scissors, paper, and stone. Now, of course, some of you will think that, oh, I will need to make sure that this is a number, right? So you can actually use the same while loop that we have done earlier, right? While player w dot is numeric. Okay. Sorry, before this, we always write while not player, right? If you want to write it the other way, like while player dot is numeric is equals to false, this is also okay, right? So if you understand this better, right, as long as the player is numeric turns out to be false, you want to key in again, it is perfectly fine. Okay, all right, it's perfectly fine. Now, of course, there is another condition over here. If you realize we have only number 1, 2, and 3, right? So we can actually get the computer to check for us, right? The number that is given, is it 1, 2, or 3, right? So we need to check for that as well. Okay, so I will set that aside for your own homework. You can try it out. Okay, but for now, I'm just gonna move on. Okay, so you can try it out at home later on if you have free time, right? Try to check at least your weapon. It must be 1, 2, or 3. Okay, you can use a logical operator over here to extend this to make it longer. All right. Now, once I've checked that this number is correct, I will do player weapon cast it to an integer. Right? Because if I have 1, 2, or 3 as a string, I would not be able to compare with my my computer later on, right? My computer is going to have a random weapon. Okay, so if I do com underscore weapon, okay, I am going to have a random dot rand in 1, 2, 3. Okay, so obviously I will need something like an import random, right? Because I need to do a rand in. Okay, now once we have the weapons ready, it is time to decide the outcome of the round, right? So what do we need? Okay, we need to write out the possible outcome first, right? So I have computer over here and player, right? I have scissors, paper, stone. Okay, same here, scissors, paper, stone. Okay, there is a total of 9 outcomes, right? So if we were to do the normal way of if, elif, else, if, elif, else, there's like 9 conditions to write, or at least 8, right? If you're gonna use else, okay? There is a way to shortcut this, right? We need to just study the pattern, right? So if scissors, if computer choose scissors and player 1 choose scissors, all right, obviously this is a draw, right? Paper, paper, draw. Stone, stone, draw. Okay, you realize that, oh, as long as the computer weapon and the player weapon is the same, it will always be a draw. Okay, and then we need to decide who wins on the other situations, right? Let's say if my computer selects paper and I select scissors, right? So this is the player victory. Okay, so player wins when player use scissors, computer use paper, right? Or when player use paper, computer use stone. Or when player use a stone, computer use scissors. Okay, whereas the other condition will definitely be computer winning. All right, so we can actually change this. All right, so this is one pattern. All right, when they are equals, there will always be a draw. Okay, whereas the others, we will need to hard code it. Okay, that means we need to check the scissors, sorry, the player one's weapon and the computer's weapon manually. Okay, how would I go about doing this? All right, I'm going to show you now. Okay, so let's write the conditions, right? So if player weapon is exactly equals to your computer weapon, all right, we are just going to print it's a tie. Okay, now of course, if you want to be fair, you can also write conditions to print out the statements over here, right? If player W is equals to 1, you print that player has chosen scissors, okay? But just for debugging purpose, I'm going to print out the statement like this, print, sorry, with the F strings. Player has selected, all right, player weapon, okay? And computer has selected computer weapon. Okay, now the purpose of this sentence is for me to check if my conditions are correct. Okay, so I just want to make sure that if my player selects scissors and my computer selects a paper, my player should win. All right, this is for me to have that check. All right, without this, I wouldn't able to tell what is the weapon that is being chosen by my player or by the computer. All right, now the next one is where I will need to do an Alif to check whether my player is victorious, right? So what are the what are the alternatives for my player to be victorious, right? It is when my player weapon is scissors, right? One is scissors, right? And my computer weapon is scissors, paper, stone, paper, right? So this is the first condition where my player would be victorious. Okay, so when my player is victorious, I will just print player wins the round. Okay, and of course, if the player wins the round, I will need to keep track of the score, right? So that I can actually get the computer to to compare who wins the ultimate game, right? Who wins the game after the 10 rounds, right? So I would need to have a variable to keep track of the score. Okay, so let's say maybe this is player score plus equals 1, right? So I will just I need to actually initialize it first, right? Player score at 0, all right? Computer score also at 0, right? Both of them starts at 0 before the game starts, right? Now, this is not the only condition where my player actually wins, right? So if you want to write the next condition, you can do Alif player underscore weapon equals to 2 and your com weapon is equals to 3, right? Let's say, for example, your player now chooses paper and your computer chooses stone. This will also result in having the same result. Okay, your player wins, and then you have your player score increased by 1. Okay, and the next one is when your player W, right, which is your player weapon, is actually equals to stone, and your computer chooses scissors instead. All right, this will result in having your player wins the round and your score increased by 1. Oops. Okay, let me just space. Now, when you realize that, when you realize that there are 3 conditions that are doing the same thing, okay, that means these 3 conditions can be combined into 1. Okay, because either one of these conditions is achieved, your results will be the same, right? As long as this or this or this condition is being met, all right, this action will take place. Okay, so with that said, we can combine this to make a very long complex condition. Okay, but of course, if you think this is easier to read, which is correct, and easier for you to understand, you can leave it like this. Okay, for those who think that you want to try out the logical operator, you can use an OR operator and bring this entire condition over. Okay, I will have 2 different OR operators over here because either one of these conditions, if they are true, my player would have won the game. Okay, all right. Now, last but not least, I will also need to check if my computer have won the round, right? If it's not any of these cases, right? If it's not the draw, if it's not the player win, obviously there's only one more outcome, which is computer winning the round. Okay, and this is going to be com_score plus equals 1. All right, so this is computer winning the round. Okay, now this is me. Oh, sorry, let me just zoom out so that you guys can have a better overlook on this. All right, so this is me running the entire game, 10 rounds, right? We need to decide who is the final victor after 10 rounds. Okay, so at the end of this for loop, okay, outside of the for loop, we need to check, right, if my player score is equals to my com score. Okay, remember, if I have 3 possible outcomes, either a draw, a win, or a lose, okay, usually the tie will always be the first that we are going to check first, right? Because it is one of the least possible outcomes, right? One of the hardest possible outcomes to meet. So I am going to print the game ends with a tie, okay? You can also update your score over here, right? You can print the score, okay, at the end of every round. Okay, so we can just print f strings, okay, player score, player underscore score, and then we have also a computer score, com score. Okay, all right, so this is going to be printed every single time the for loop runs, right? So the first loop, it will print the score after the first round. Second loop, it will print the score again, okay? So that you can check ultimately who is the victor. Okay, then we have Alif, player underscore score is more than, more than the com score. Okay, print player wins. All right, else print computer, all caps, wins. All right, so this will be your scissors, paper, stone. Okay, let's try it out. Okay, I run this. Okay, I'm gonna choose my weapon. This is round 1. I'm gonna choose paper. Okay, and because my computer chose stone, I win, right? Because I'm paper, yay. All right, then let me just spam paper all the time. Okay, computer still choose stone. Wow, the computer chose stone 4 times in a row. Okay, all right, now if it's a tie, at least my score doesn't change, right? So this is correct. Okay, and then let me just spam 2. Okay, my computer is still choosing stone. All right, it's a tie. Okay, my computer finally chooses scissors, right? That wins the round. Okay, my computer score increased by 1. Perfectly fine. Okay, and last round, all right. So last round, I win the round as well. My score is 7, computer score is 1, player wins. Okay, this is correct. All right, so there are a few things you can tweak to make this better. All right, obviously you can come up with conditions to check what is the weapon that's being selected, right? If weapon is equals to 1, you print the player selected scissors, right? If it's 2, selected paper. If it's 3, selected stone, right? Likewise for your computer. And you can also set another condition over here to make sure that the number that the player has input is definitely between 1 to 3. All right, so there are the 2 possible additions that you can make to this program. Okay, with that said, all right, this will be the final project that we're going to do today. Tomorrow, we're going to explore the data structures, that is your list, dictionaries. I'm going to talk a bit about sets and a bit about tuples, right? But we're going to focus more on lists and dictionaries. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to look at the chat to see, are there any questions? Okay. When is the next lesson? Tomorrow, 4 p.m. Yes. Okay. If there are no more questions, I will pass the time back to Ricky or Val so that you can do the closing.
Okay. Sure. I will
Right.
share my screen from here.
Okay, thank you. I'll just stop sharing for now.
Okay.